Hi guys, and welcome back to Switch Up. Today we've got a review of Ash of Gods, so a big thanks to the developer for the review copy. If you enjoy the content, then please do leave a comment down below, we read all of them. Ash of Gods is a fantastic looking game, but unfortunately, as we all know, looks are only skin deep. There needs to be far more in there than just a pretty face, and Ash of Gods hopes to be the tactical equivalent to something akin to the Bana Saga series. Do the mechanics hold up, or fold under the weight of expectation? Let's find out. The story is eerily familiar. The world you inhabit is subject to the Reaping, where a vast number of monstrous beings intend to destroy the human race. There is a zombie-like element to the way they can cast signs upon a town using magic, and the populace literally tears itself apart. Now, the only defense against these are the inhuman beings that fight for you, but who, without spoiling too much of the story, share some similarities with your enemy. The first character you play as is one such being, however, he failed in his task and was knocked unconscious. His journey leads him from the mountaintops to the lowlands in a slightly confusing and oftentimes muddled game of cat and mouse with another of the playable characters. Now here's where the first cracks begin to show. Storytelling is straight up poor at times, mainly due to a translation from Russian that literally any English-speaking person could have improved with ease. Sentence structure is more often than not quite unusual and feels disjointed and juxtaposed with what you feel the character should be saying, such as a king being essentially abused by a lord and him just ignoring this and saying something else. The second playable character is a general and his daughter, and they find themselves out shopping for a gift for your sickly wife when the Reaping begins. Events escalate and you'll be fleeing for your life across the vast map. Some of the emotional moments are handled well, and others not so much. The inconsistencies are as jarring as the less than stellar text work. The final character, and my favourite, is the Bodyguard. Now, unlike the other two, his writing seems to fit much more closely with the represented character. He'll often have a dialogue option to stay silent, to honour his code with which he has been raised, and this gives him a quiet menace that I loved. Combat takes place in a fixed isometric view, and strangely here the controls should be simple. However, some non-standard button choices and odd systems make it a real handful to get to grips with at first, when it should be more than simple. Moves take place in turns, and again, the order of these isn't fixed, but you can see who could be next to move. Once moved, they have to wait until everyone has taken their next turn, so it does get easier to make counterplays as the computer takes more of their turns and prior to the next full round beginning. Each character has two pools, health and energy, and the unique mechanic here is that your energy acts as a shield of sorts. If you target an enemy's energy pool and manage to reduce that to 0, then any damage you do to health will be doubled. Now the stupid design choice though is that you have to attack the empty energy pool to do the double damage, rather than being able to just attack their health and do damage that way. It just was a bit odd. Some abilities are area of effect, and to use these, you'll need to ensure your energy is high enough. Again, with the strange design choices, you can access your area of effect abilities by clicking in the left analog stick. It's just such an odd way to do it. You invariably forget that, and without a clear indication of which ones of your skills are area of effect, you may find yourself doing more damage to your own team than the enemy. Now, all of this improves as you play, but it's fair to say that the game does a poor job of teaching you adequately how to use the many systems, the direct opposite of the recent Thronebreaker we reviewed here on Switch Up. Now, while it may sound like I didn't enjoy the combat, it's not the case. Once I got to grips with the unusual controls and had got my head around the targeting of the energy pool, then it made sense. The card system, which is essentially not a card system at all, but spells on cards, was also quite nice. These allow you to use them mid-battle, however some have negative effects. The twist being that more powerful and therefore useful cards could only be used later in the combat. This was shown by the round number on the card and meant there was a decent bit of prior planning when choosing which ones to take into battle. Upgrading your characters is straightforward enough, although I hit a bug once where I couldn't press any buttons on the screen and had to restart the game and upgrade at a different location. Otherwise, it would just hang repeatedly. Skill upgrades include new abilities that will cost more energy, or the cost reduction on your existing skills. It's all pretty standard, but it's nice to have it in there. Now the currency as you travel across the map are the Strixes. These are magical items which keep the reaping from corrupting your party. It acts as the food and supplies of Bana Saga and can prove tricky to find, that can lead to party members suffering travel wounds that impact their starting health in combat. Now the wounds suffered in combat on fallen comrades can stack and lead to permanent death, but there are also story controlled character deaths which are entirely out of your control. As you venture across the ravaged land with the reaping settling in, you'll encounter a number of scenarios requiring player input. Some of these were quite weighty decisions and would impact the story arc to a degree. You'd be made aware of this via an on-screen visual aid when this was the case. However, it wasn't always made explicitly clear how exactly your choice had influenced things. And again, I put that down to the substandard translation. Over the course of its runtime, there is plenty to keep you engaged, and I enjoyed my time travelling and juggling the risk and reward of taking different routes towards my goal in the hopes of finding some treasure trove. It was fun. Choice is where it's at its best, with the option to buy from the trader or rob him, to maintain your oaths and stay silent, or break traditions and attempt to save a stranger, or simply be lenient or stern with your companions. Overall, gameplay for me scores 14 out of 20. The writing and slightly clunky combat design choices affected my overall enjoyment of what would have and probably should have been an outstanding experience, but there is still fun to be had here. Controls score 14 out of 20. They're just a little odd. Despite being functional and mispressing buttons based on muscle memory from every other similar game in the genre was a common occurrence. The game absolutely excels in the visual department. It looks simply stunning. This style of artwork isn't seen a great deal simply because it isn't cheaply produced. It requires large amounts of time and patience, and well, it really has paid off. Everyone you meet looks great with backdrops equally well painted. Comparisons will be drawn to a game that you know, the Bana Saga, and I have to say it's not quite as good as that, but it's very, very close. As an artist of sorts myself, it may in the end come down to your personal preference, but from a detail perspective, it's still very impressive. The score from Adam Skarupa is wonderful. However, the game once again made a few irritating choices that would knock my audio score down. While the music is lovely, no doubt, the developer decided to include in the storyline that the bells of the towns chime magically whenever the reaping is at hand. Oh my goodness, is this a pain in the ear canals? The incessant chiming can go on for half an hour to an hour at times, specifically near the beginning and middle of the story, and it was just a silly choice. Still, the actual music is lovely and well worth listening to, even separate from the game. Ambient sounds are good, though the combat and acoustic sounds are just okay. Visuals score 18 out of 20, while the audio on the whole scores 15 out of 20. Now the game will cost you £24.99, €29.99 or $29.99. You can actually pick this up even more cheaply already physically. I found it on base.com here in the UK for around about £21, which is definitely okay value despite the quirks I mentioned. If you can get past some of the more silly translations, there are some really emotional and impactful moments, and I don't think at this price asked that you're going to regret a purchase. In fact, the last character alone is almost worth the price of admission. He is a total badass. The one point I would mention though, and one that would need serious consideration, is that for about a third more than this price you can pick up the entire physical Bana Saga trilogy on the Nintendo Switch, and well, they're superior games. Definitely something to ponder. Regardless though, I think the asking price is okay. Perhaps £20 would have been the sweet spot. Value scores 14 out of 20. Overall then, a bit of a mixed bag. The main area for many in a title like this will be the writing. When that isn't quite translated right, you're going to get a few jarring moments that just don't come off right. Conversely, there are some great ones, and the fiddly combat when learned can be quite rewarding. It scores an overall switch up score of 75%. A big thanks to the developer for the review copy. Let us know down in the comments what you think of this one. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!